All right, hello again. This is Ben Hitchcock Cross talking to you today, and we've got the Maxwell Anderson trial is now done and over, guilty on all counts. Um, Here's where I'm at with that. I watched. Uh, you may or may not know because I haven't been posting very much recently. I'm knee deep into Karen Reid. I'm also knee deep into Discovery on Keither and about 10 other things. So I'm a little bit occupied, but this case slowly crept into my mind because I gave permission for everybody at the office who wanted to watch it in the background. Um, and it took me a couple of days to understand what this case was really about, which was the Milwaukee County proving to the vulnerable populations of Milwaukee County that it was actually going to do somebody when somebody murdered a black female. And you'll hear in the defense, or if you get into this, that there was unprecedented um, use of law enforcement resources for Milwaukee County with regard to this case. And I think certainly and undoubtedly with regard to the investigation of a murder of a young black female. Um, and I think that's true for a lot of different reasons. But also, I think it's important to understand that, there is clearly a race issue here, and that is part of um, if not just for performative reasons, what's going on here. And there are certainly some things, and I guess just to be clear, I want to be clear that I think that Milwaukee County is very consciously responding to this race as a race issue. But then it's also very interesting. The team that they put forward was largely white, um, and really coming from sort of a largely white um, background, and how to put it, a white case, for lack of a better word. Um, is there such a thing as, I mean, a standard, what I'm talking about there is a standard Milwaukee County case. They were treating this in many respects, from what I saw, as a fairly ordinary case. Um, I've sat on probably half a dozen criminal trials of one varying degree or another, and didn't seem to me to be particularly above the level of skill. Some things were better than others. Some people were prepped better than others. Um, but there certainly was some question in my mind about was this our best foot forward. Um, and I think the other thing I will say about this is it's extremely local. Um, the neighborhood in which this all happened, the duplex, that this is all where I lived for many years. I know the parks involved. Pizza Shuttle's a fantastic place, um, where this young lady, Miss Robinson, worked, and I think that's a thing. I will also say, sorry, and I know I'm sort of bouncing around here, but I am still processing a lot of this. Um, I will give the prosecution credit, especially in the opening statements, for making reference to Maxwell Anderson trying to obliterate Sade Robinson from the face of the earth, from existence. And he put it slightly better than I can, and I'm ashamed that I can't remember it, um, from just a couple of days ago. But that um, point is clear, and I think that there's also sort of, it comes out, I think, and there's this moment that people around the office have mentioned several times. This moment, this look on the judge's face when it becomes clear that it may be possible that there's other victims. Um, and I think that was, that is a big part of what else is going on. Um, but I do want to say that, the obliteration of black people, I think, is part of an issue here, and an issue, black females particularly, and an issue that many people in the Milwaukee community that I was interacting with, I would say, why this hit home. And I did in my experience can say that it was people of color, particularly women of color, felt this more particularly than others, and were more interested in that trial. And I think it's fair to say that, in my experience, white people were more interested in the Karen Reed one. It took me a while to sort of, I remember this case also. I heard it on Grizzly Crime, True Crime with Griselda, and I remember all that. It was a little bit hard to watch it. It was extremely hard to watch because of how close to home it was and just how absolutely creepy everything seemed to be. Um, and I do want to be clear. From everything I understand, it seems like this is, um, another Dahmer kind of situation here, and it's a big problem. And my mind also goes to if that's dawning on the judge that there's other victims. There's no way the state doesn't know that in one way or the other, and that's a problem. Um, yeah, I guess I don't know. I think a murder is a murder is a murder, but all victims have the need to be heard. So, um, yeah, and the main piece of evidence that I understand is that there's other female IDs that are hidden in some secret cache in that house. Um, okay. I also want to say, um, finally, and this is my commentary before we get into it. I will be clear. I watched the opening statements and I got into about 2 days through of testimony here, and um, I was expecting there to be more. The and meaning having time to catch up. The When the defense put on absolutely no witnesses of any kind, um, I just stopped watching, frankly. Um, and I think in my mind as a juror, I guess this the question here. This the last and final musing I'm going to put on before we do this opening statements here, and thank you all for putting up with me for some time here, some little time anyway. It as a person has a right, is presumed innocent, and in theory that means that they have to put on no witnesses of any kind, and that the state has to prove its burden. Um, And I'll say this, I think two other things. I've seen this be the case where um and only really other attorneys understand this, where the client is ultimately the person it's the party. You're in charge, you're a representative. So we don't know who's driving this bus. But I'll also say this, that I've seen the Wisconsin Public Defender's Office do this several times where they ask, um, you're going to ask people. I'm seeing them do this where they put on no defense ultimately, and sort of like, well, they didn't put on their case, so what the heck? And I'm just going to say that from my gut feeling, I feel like you need to put something on, which I guess is not right. I mean, according to the law, that's not right. That you don't, even your mom should come up and speak for you and say, I didn't raise a bad boy. At least something. At least another. I mean, just for example, the the most compelling piece of evidence for me as someone who's lived in a duplex in Milwaukee downstairs in River West is you can hear everything about the person who lives above you, everything about them. From their all of their intimate habits to their who their real friends are, who everything is. And even if you can't hear every word of their conversations, just by the pitter patter of little feet, you know what's going on. And when they think they're being slick, when everything. And so that, to my mind, was just the biggest piece of evidence in his own favor is there's no way this could have happened in the house, certainly multiple times without him knowing it, the roommate knowing that, or at least that's a pretty good doubt. Another good factor in his defense might have been the other people that he had gone on dates with and presumably not murdered. That would have been good evidence, and they had put on those people existed. So I didn't get that myself. And I guess that's the broader question for today is if a defendant, even with the presumption of innocence, if a defendant puts on no witnesses, are you gonna have a hard time finding them guilty? Because technically that's wrong, right? Okay. All right, let's
Ladies and
take it
gentlemen,
away.
at the beginning of this trial, I told you that I was going to ask you to do two things then. I'm asking you to do the same two things now, and it's use your common sense and search for the truth. That is what the bulk of those instructions are telling you to do. You have heard all of the evidence in this case. You have heard from dozens of witnesses. You have seen hundreds of images, watched stacks of videos. You are fully equipped to determine what the facts are, what it is that happened on April 1st and April 2nd. All of that information has rendered you capable of rendering fair and rational verdicts. And the judge has instructed you on the law, and shortly, probably not today, but when you come back tomorrow, it's going to be your time to let you.
All right, I think it's really funny. How they have I have someone who's had the same experience, how they why do they have to put the camera up into the behind? The man has a nice suit on. I'm sure he spent most of his time focusing on his front. Um, and as somebody whose hair used to be thicker, I can totally understand um how he might feel there. This is a serious situation. Everything about this is so 70s. This is in the sort of the criminal courts. I don't think we've seen this, but there's going to be like a glass partition between the public and what's happening inside the actual courtroom. Um, yeah, I everything about that was too bad.
Your voice heard after hearing everything that you have heard. On the night of April 1st, 2024, into April 2nd, 2024, Sade Robinson was murdered. She was taken to Warnemont Park, cut into pieces, dispersed mostly into Lake Michigan, her car taken to the north side of Milwaukee, and burned behind an abandoned building at 30th and Lisbon. And the evidence in this case has shown you beyond a reasonable doubt that the individual responsible for those intentional acts is Maxwell Anderson.
Let me tie a couple pieces of information together. Cudahy is on Milwaukee's south side. It's an independent former factory town. Patrick Cudahy and company, I think they're meat packers. Like West Allis is Alice Chalmers. We could go on. Um, so it was a carve out, and the whole point is they could have the police department or whatever under the control of the local baron. Um, so, but that is all the way to the south side there, which is again the south side of Milwaukee, uh, through to Cudahy, um, which kind of would give somebody a kind of a false understanding, could potentially give somebody a false understanding of who had done it, and then to take the car to the north side, which is clear code for black side of town, 30th and Lisbon, an abandoned building. I mean, I have a pretty good idea of what we're talking about here. Um, that would have been Lisbon is this diagonal street. I'm very likely sure that there is a train tracks not too far from there, and that would have given a different impression about what was going on there. As a robbery or something like that. Um, so the last thing that the prosecutor said was intention, and I think that this shows intentionality here. And sometimes these guys who are, for lack of a better word, 80% clever. I think that was the word I used around the office, 20% stupid. It then, it might be 60, 40, 70, 30, who knows. The whole point of this metaphor is that they have this genius plan in their mind, but they clearly miss obvious things like not showing your face on a bus because you drove. Oh, yeah, okay. Why not walk? I mean, it's again, it's not the perfect, so much the aspect of the perfect crime. It's that this is like you had all the time in the world supposedly to think this through, and this is the best you could do. Final thing is just like no tie, white t-shirt visible, no jacket on. I don't know who advised him of that, but that's not a good look. I mean, you look like a punk.
This is my opportunity to summarize the evidence for you, and I'm going to do it in kind of essentially the form of a timeline on the TV screen here. So we'll start out with Sade's day. And Sade Robinson, she was a 19-year-old young woman just coming into adulthood. She was anything and everything that any 19-year-old would want to be. She worked a job. She worked 2 jobs. She went to MATC. She was supporting herself. She had her small Lower East Side apartment, modest. And most of all, she was loved and respected by her family. She was fun.
Lower East Side, that's code word for UWM or environs. That's going to be expensive, moderately fun. It's more or less where my parents live. Um, expensive and tiny. It's being, I mean, 19, that's not easy. And working a pizza shuttle.
Social, and clearly anybody knew her, cared about her deeply, until she came into contact with 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson.
Oh, dang. I didn't realize he was
At
that
9
old.
a.m., April 1st, Sade left her apartment at 1858 North Commerce Street. She is wearing the last clothes she would ever wear, that white cable knit top, the black puffy coat, the ripped jeans, and the white shoes. And she went to work at Pizza Shuttle. She arrived at Pizza Shuttle over there on North Farwell Avenue on the Lower East Side around 9:15 a.m. and
That's pretty close to home.
she worked her shifts just like any other day of her life.
Dang.
Beginning around 4:15 p.m., she began texting with Maxwell Anderson. They had met the previous weekend at Victor's. You saw the video of her going into Victor's and then him walking her out. And it's clear that they were intending to meet up that night. And Maxwell Anderson says, why not Twisted Fisherman? And this text conversation begins around 4:15 p.m., and they agree to meet there shortly after 5 p.m. We know from the cellular records where each of them are at those times. Maxwell Anderson is over at his house on South 39th Street, and Sade is up here at Twisted Fisherman. When her shift is over, she goes to meet him at the Twisted Fisherman. Maxwell Anderson takes an Uber ride. Sade leaves work at 5, and the phone information shows them both moving towards the Twisted Fisherman right around the same time. And we know that Maxwell Anderson walks in to the Twisted Fisherman at 5:09 p.m. wearing that black Carhartt shirt that would later be found in his laundry, and the red plaid jacket that police found inside Maxwell Anderson's house that has Sade Robinson's DNA on it and Maxwell Anderson's DNA on it. Minutes after he gets there, he sits down at the bar. He sends a text to Sade, just got to Twisted.
She's kind of staring down the jury. I don't know about all that. Okay, so they do have another angle. It's, shouldn't be. I mean, let's see. If we couldn't put these filters up, we would never get through life. But it is, but for the grace of something go I, and it is shocking to see. There's no doubt at this time, I was probably going to Pizza Shuttle at least every 2 weeks, um, especially on Friday night to go pick up pizza for everybody. Because, all right, Yeah.
Sade arrives around 5:20. We know that from about 5:20 p.m. to 6:24 p.m., the two of them sit at Twisted Fisherman. They eat, they have some drinks. They both take shots. In fact, at one point, Sade turns down a shot, but they're just hanging out. And after 6:24 p.m., the two of them leave Twisted Fisherman together. They walk out and they walk together to Sade Robinson's 2020 Honda Civic that she has driven there. Sade drives the two of them from Twisted Fisherman to Dukes on Water. We know they travel to Dukes on Water between 6:24 p.m., arriving there just around 6:33 p.m., and you saw the video of them parking. Sade, again, driving, Maxwell Anderson riding passenger, just the two of them. They walk into Dukes on Water at 6:36 p.m., consistent with the phone information showing them arrive at Dukes on Water at 6:36 p.m.
This is the pink salt recipe that took me from 198 to 147 in just weeks. And the best part, it's natural, simple, has zero side effects, and takes less than a minute to make. No $2,000 injections needed.
Jeez Louise, sorry everybody.
They stay there. They hang out right here. Maxwell Anderson is drinking. He's having multiple drinks. Sade's got a couple drinks. Mr. Anderson takes it upon himself to play a few games of bar dice, and he takes several shots. But at no point at any time when they're at Twisted Fisherman or Dukes on Water is Sade Robinson doing anything that comes close to excessive drinking or anything like that. In fact, when you watch her on these videos, she is totally coherent.
Do people where you are play bar dice? Is that a particularly Wisconsin thing? It's basically a game. I mean, you're playing a dice game with the gambling with the bartender for another shot of alcohol is essentially what is going on there. I don't know how it's even legal, but it is such a thing. My grandfather always had a prohibition on gambling, or so I was told, but mostly I just don't like losing. And that's something you got to do when you gamble.
She has her wits about her. When they leave at 9:03 p.m., she's fine. They walk out together. She's not stumbling. She's totally fine. They walk together to her car. She gets in the driver's seat, and he gets in the passenger's seat, and it's just the two of them who leave the bar together. And ladies and gentlemen, this video right here that's playing on the screen and the surrounding videos that watch Sade going into her car, this is the last time Sade Robinson was in public with anybody else. That young lady who's in Dukes, who she gives a hug to at the end of the night when they're leaving, that's the last person other than the defendant who she was with, who she had contact with. That's what the evidence shows.
Man, they were together for a while.
After this time, they leave, and we know exactly what route they took. Through the videos from downtown, they drove Sade Robinson driving, Mr. Anderson riding passenger. They take McKinley up. They get on the interstate. They drive to the south side. This is occurring from 9:04 to 9:14 p.m. By 9:14 to 9:25, they're getting off the interstate, heading westbound on Morgan Avenue. It's the Holt Avenue exit, but it's Morgan Avenue to the west of the interstate. And they go and they arrive at his residence just around 9:20 to 9:25 p.m. That's what the phone records confirm.
I thought he lived in River
and
West.
that is what the videos, here's one of them from around Sade's residence, show as well. You had the videos of them pulling into the alley. All of this confirming, by the way, that Sade Robinson's phone is essentially wherever her car is that night, right? It's at Pizza Shuttle when she's working, it's at Twisted Fisherman when she's there, and it goes back to her with Maxwell Anderson after they leave Dukes. And they don't stop anywhere. Remember that. When they leave Dukes, they don't stop anywhere. It's a continuous trip on that Life 360 app from Dukes to Mr. Anderson's home, and they arrive there at 9:20 p.m. And we know that after 9:20 p.m., 9:23, this is that really small video that shows them coming into his backyard at 9:24 p.m. She has parked her car in the alley, just the two of them, and they come inside at 9:24. And by 9:25 p.m., they are upstairs. That motion light is on. And you heard from the detective who watched this video for hundreds of hours. You saw a lot of the clips from here overnight, some of them pretty cumbersome, but what did that establish that happened? It established that they were both there in Maxwell Anderson's apartment, and there is constant movement coming from that upstairs front window, starting at 9:25 p.m. when they're up there and going essentially on and off all the way up until 12:45 a.m., at which time all movement at that house, in that front window, and in that backyard by that back gate stops. What else happens in that time? You see movement beginning at 11:24 p.m. in the side yard. Here's the slide that shows their phones remaining there, corroborating what the video shows of her car arriving there as well. At 11:25 p.m., we see that movement in the side yard beginning. Then there's movement again after 11:25 p.m. on and off in that above front room. 12:05 to 12:08 a.m., what do we know is happening? We know that Maxwell Anderson is on his phone, traversing his photo gallery, where he has, by 12:05, already acquired pictures, already taken pictures of Sade Robinson incapacitated on his couch. She is face down. Her face is buried in his couch cushion. He has her breast exposed, and he is grabbing her right breast, the breast that would later be cut off of her body, and pulling her pants down. And you know from the search warrant of the house, this right here is that brown ottoman, this right here is the red couch. Between the movement in that front window and these photographs, you know that Sade Robinson became incapacitated while she was in that front room of Maxwell Anderson's house, laying on his couch, face down.
I wanted to say, and I remember that from the opening. Let's see how much that connection there between the hand on the breast and which was later found severed from the body, a corpse, that was in my mind particularly damning evidence, not just for general reasons, but it just seems like that is something that somebody who was doing that would do, if you follow me. And I found that to be particularly duh.
She is out of it there. Out of it. He is grabbing her because he knows he can, because she's not going to do anything about it. She has no power. You can see that in those photos. Her face down in the cushions. 12:44 a.m. This is the last movement in that side yard. And if you recall, I made it a point to ask about the two blinking lights from her car, the Honda Civic. You saw it in the video from when they left Dukes on Water, and you see it in this video from across the street. It's faint, but it's there. This is the time, ladies and gentlemen, where Maxwell Anderson is removing Sade's body from his house, taking her to the car. It's now time to get rid of her, and he's got to do it in her car. He needs the car away from his home. He needs to get rid of anything that's going to tie her back to his home. He needs that car gone. He needs her gone. 12:47 a.m. is when we see the car leaving the house, going southbound, exiting onto Euclid, and from there you saw an exhausting amount of videos showing the car driving away from his house, northbound to the north side of Milwaukee. That was 12:49, 12:51 going northbound on 35th Street, passing Badger Ham, 12:53 a.m. northbound, passing 35th and Greenfield, And eventually, we get the exact route that is taken when we get the phone records. He drove northbound on 35th. He went to the downtown area, and he ultimately exited the interstate just prior to 1:00 a.m. Remember, this timestamp was off by about 2 minutes and I thought it was 2 minutes, 40 seconds or so that the detective said. That is her car. We know it's her car because this camera happens to have a license plate reader. And that license plate reader is putting her on that exit ramp downtown at the exact same time that her phone, her Life 360 and Verizon records show that that car would be exiting at that same time. What can you conclude from that? You can conclude that her phone is in that car. Someone's driving that car. It's Maxwell Anderson. Continues to drive. He goes up Commerce, passes by her apartment building. I know something of defense was trying to make some note of it. They never stop at her apartment building. There's no evidence that that happened whatsoever. And the detectives reviewed hours and hours of video footage from her apartment building to ensure that that car never came back and that Sade never came back to the apartment. He didn't stop there, and these records confirm that. What does he do? He drives the car with her body up into the River West area by about 1:33 a.m. There he is at 106, driving her past Commerce Street, passing Lakefront Brewery. And then he heads into River West. You saw the video of the car in River West off of Dowsman near Pleasant Valley Park along the Milwaukee River. And what do we know happens while he's out and about driving around? His phone dies. He leaves his phone behind. That was done on purpose. Because look at all the records we have showing where her phone traveled and where his phone traveled before this time. He left it behind to cover up. That's why he did that. And we know that because we looked at it, and you heard from the analyst today who said that all activity on that cell phone stopped after 12:08 a.m., right after he's deleting pictures of Sade Robinson on his phone, of him grabbing her. Phone dies at 1:35 a.m. while he's driving her car around trying to get rid of her and trying to get rid of the car. He goes down Capitol. You saw the two videos showing the car going down Capitol. He doubles back towards the interstate. And by 2:20 to 2:25, he's back on the interstate heading back towards downtown. He eventually goes down through downtown on Interstate 94, ends up heading sort of west over to Greenfield, and then he comes back. And where do we know that he's heading at this time? He's heading to Warnemont Park.
Why do that whole...
The phone records show that between 2:34 and 2:39, he's on the interstate, getting off on College Avenue. We saw the video of him exiting on College Avenue, and you saw the video of the car going through the airport tunnel in the direction of Warnemont Park. No stops being made, by the way. 2:51, he's passing by St. Luke's Hospital, going north on Lake Drive, all in an effort to ultimately end right here, Warnemont Park. Keep in mind what Agent Reinerth testified to, the 4 dwellings that Sade Robinson's Life 360 showed. There were 4 of them. Twisted Fisherman, her own work, or excuse me, Twisted Fisherman, Dukes on Water, Maxwell Anderson's house, and Warnemont Park, where she ends up. And her phone stays there for over 2.5 hours. Excuse me, an hour and a half. 2:52 is the arrival time, 4:33 a.m. That's the time the phone is there. We know at 2:52, her car is passing by the water department. And by 2:53 a.m., this was one of the first videos we saw, there's the Honda Civic going down Pulaski Avenue, going down the service road, and ramming the gate to get down that service road, that steep road that you saw a photo of today when Chloe Wright was testifying. Why ram the gate? He knows how to get down there without ramming the gate. You saw a photo of the place, the way that they would walk down.
Yeah, what the
You
heck?
ram the gate because there is a body in the car that you have to get rid of, that you can't carry. He rams the gate. We know it's using her car because the crime lab fitted the broken pieces of Honda back to her vehicle. No question about whose car was used to ram that gate. It was Sade Robinson's Honda Civic. From 2:52 to 4:30 a.m., like I said, the phone remains in that location. What is that location? That is Maxwell Anderson's secret beach. It's the place, of all the places in Milwaukee County to go, of all the places to go, Sade's body ends up at his secret beach. He chose that location on purpose. You heard the reasons why today. It's secluded. He didn't even want to tell Chloe Wright what the name of the place was. He wants to keep it to himself. And you've seen the photos of it. You've seen how high those cliffs are. This is the middle of the night on a Monday into a Tuesday in a rainy early April evening. No one's going to catch him in the act. It's pitch black down there. It's the perfect place in his mind to take her to accomplish this. Because he knew he had work to do. He needed to cut her up and get rid of her.
That's some rapid
So he
blinking.
takes her to a place he knows and a place he trusts. A place he knows he's not going to get caught. You saw the videos of the person who we now know as Maxwell Anderson ascending and descending the bluffs on the north side of the pump house, the side where her leg would later be found on April 2nd, going up the exact paths that Chloe Wright told you they would take to go down there and hang out. The exact paths. This is the time, ladies and gentlemen, where he is cutting up her body. She is dead. Now it's time for him to get rid of her. So that's where he goes. He takes her to his place. You saw in the video when he's coming up the bluff at 4:26 a.m. He's down there for over an hour and a half. And in that time, you heard gruesomely all that was done to Sade. All the cutting. The blunt force trauma to her bones. All of it done to get rid of her, to make her disappear. That's what he wanted to do.
Make her disappear.
That's what he tried to do. And he did it in this time frame. From about 3 a.m. when he got there to 4:30 when he left. Now is time for him to get rid of her car. So what does he do? 4:34, he drives her car out of Warnemont Park. We know he heads northbound on Lake Drive. We know that because Sade's phone is still in his car. Here's the record showing the direction of travel. From the site where the leg is found, her body is dispersed, headed northbound on Lake Drive, westbound on Howard Avenue here until the phone goes off the network. There's the video of him going by. And there's the last clip before it gets to the north side. And by 4:50 a.m., it is at 27th and Wells where you can see the driver is a white person. You can see that in this video, and you can see how fogged up it is, and you can see how there's something covering the back window. He then drives north, circles the area of 32nd and Vliet, tries to go down this dead end near 34th and McKinley, but activates a ring light, so he decides, I got to go to a different place than this. There's no reason for him to drive down that street. Circles around until about 5:20 a.m. when he goes off camera and reappears at 6:50. And it is at this point, ladies and gentlemen, that he is in the 31st and Galena playground. This is the area where her leg is found, her left leg.
There's a lot of cameras.
That gap shows that during that time period, he went into that playground to dispose of her leg.
In a playground.
By 7:30 a.m., you saw the video of him walking away from the burning car, where we now know from the crime lab he used an ignitable petroleum distillate to light the car on fire. And he walks away.
Manual
And the
patrol.
trail of videos capture him walking southbound on 30th. He goes down Walnut Street. Trail of videos captures him all the way at 8:12 when he boards a Milwaukee County Transit bus, where his face is clearly visible, clear as day, and he's wearing a hoodie, that gray hoodie that would later end up in a dumpster 2 houses down from his. Tried to get rid of it, but he didn't. They found it. And whose DNA is on the hoodie? That is not the hoodie he's wearing on the date, by the way. That's the hoodie he's wearing after he has just dismembered a body and burned a car. And whose DNA is on it? His and Sade's.
Oof.
What are the chances of that? It's because he did it. It's because he's responsible. And he takes the bus home. He sits there, not a single time pulling out his phone. Why? Because he left it back home on purpose. And then by 8:42, walking in his back gate with that massive backpack that we have never found. He got rid of it. And whatever else was in it and whatever else was used, he tried to get rid of everything. He tried to cover up. And what does he do after he gets home? He powers up his phone and he sends a text. Morning, how's work going? Disgusting. Right after he's just burned her car, killed her. Why did he do that? He's covering up. He's trying to cover his tracks. He's trying to make sure everything seems normal. Same reason he went to work that day. Couldn't let his routine go out. He needed to maintain appearances, despite the fact that in the middle of the night, he's out cutting up a human body and burning a car.
Murdering somebody.
And by 5:29, Sade's leg is found on April 2nd.
Whoa. Oh, yeah, right. Right.
By 9 p.m. that day, she's reported missing, and the welfare checks begin. By 1 p.m. on the 4th, Mr. Anderson's arrested. And we know that in the subsequent days and month later, April 18th, May 11th,
they arrested him that quick.
additional body parts are found. Her head, her right breast have never been found. He succeeded in getting rid of those. That's what happened. Those are the facts. That's what the evidence showed. Now you have to decide, based on the law given to you, the crimes. I want to focus on the homicide count.
Remember your facts, but not your elements, huh? Come on, man. You got this.
There's 4 charges. Numbers 2, 3, and 4 are pretty self-explanatory, and you have them in writing. Mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse. Counts 2 and 4 are essentially the same elements. Count 3, the arson, pretty self-explanatory. But now you're given this first-degree intentional as well as first-degree reckless homicide. First-degree intentional homicide has 2 elements that I have to prove. I have to prove that the defendant caused the death of Sade Robinson and acted with the intent to kill. While the law requires that he acted with the intent to kill, it does not require that that intent exists for any given period of time. In fact, it says it may be formed at any time before the act, including the instant before the act. And you're also instructed that intent should not be confused with motive. While proof of intent is necessary, proof of motive is not. Motive being the reason why someone did something. That's not what we have to prove. We have to prove intent. And only if you don't all agree that he is guilty of first-degree intentional homicide, which I'm confident you will, do you even look at first-degree reckless homicide. The defendant caused the death of Sade Robinson, caused the death by criminally reckless conduct under circumstances that showed utter disregard for human life. Did he show any regard for life at all? No. So how do we know this was intentional? Everything you heard shows this was intentional. Consider all the things he intentionally did and the reasonable inferences from those actions. At 9:25 p.m., when Sade drives him and herself to his house, just the 2 of them, they went inside, and we know from before that she is coherent. She is not drinking excessively. She's in control of herself. But by 12:05, she is completely incapacitated, face down on his couch. And Anderson is grabbing her exposed right breast with no reaction from her whatsoever. He's pulling her pants down, taking photos while doing these things. This shows she was completely incapacitated, if not deceased, by that time. Consider all the acts to this point. He has her at his house, on his furniture, completely deprived of any strength or power over herself. He's then taking pictures and then intentionally takes her car and her and drives her away because he's now got to get her out of there, and he has to separate himself from her and her car. He drives with seemingly minimal direction, leaves his phones behind, brings with him a huge bag, some kind of a tool to cut up the body, takes her to a place he knows well. All done in the middle of the night. He takes her to Warnemont Park, cuts her body up, drives away, goes to the north side, goes to the 31st and Galena playground, discards her leg. He intentionally picks an abandoned building to leave her car behind, something that he has no connection to.
I agree.
Goes to the 31st and Galena playground, discards her leg. He intentionally picks an abandoned building to leave her car behind, something that he has no connection to. Intentionally stuffs her clothing that she is wearing that night. The underpants literally pulled off of her body, still in the jeans when they're found partially burned in her trunk. Stuffs her clothes in her trunk.
Face of that assistant
Uses a
prosecutor.
petroleum distillate to light the car on fire. All of that stuff was done on purpose.
Speak to you as juror.
He wouldn't have had the wherewithal to do everything he did so quickly. Think about it. In just hours, she went from photos while doing these things, was completely incapacitated, if not deceased, by that time.
Do we have
Consider
a
all the
cross-examine?
acts to this point. He has her at his house, on his furniture, completely deprived of any strength or power over herself. He's then taking pictures and then intentionally takes her car and her and drives her away because he's now got to get her out of there, and he has to separate himself from her and her car. He drives with seemingly minimal direction, leaves his phones behind, brings with him a huge bag, some kind of a tool to cut up the body, takes her to a place he knows well. All done in the middle of the night. He takes her to Warnemont Park, cuts her body up, drives away, goes to the north side, goes to the 31st and Galena playground, discards her leg. He intentionally picks an abandoned building to leave her car behind, something that he has no connection to. Intentionally stuffs her clothing that she is wearing that night. The underpants literally pulled off of her body, still in the jeans when they're found partially burned in her trunk. Stuffs her clothes in her trunk. Uses a petroleum distillate to light the car on fire. All of that stuff was done on purpose. He then heads home, powers up his phone, and texts her. Everything about this is intentional. If it was unintentional, if it was anything else, you don't cut her up and do everything you can to get rid of her. If it was an accident, you get her some help. You don't try to make her disappear. And we know from the medical examiner, there is no other explanation. There was no natural disease, no toxicology reason whatsoever for this. If it was unintentional, he wouldn't have had the wherewithal to do everything he did so quickly. Think about it. In just hours, she went from literally driving a car to being incapacitated and him somehow being able to pull off, getting her to Warnemont Park and cutting her up. He's only able to do that if he knew what he was doing, knew how he wanted to do it. This only happens with the intent to kill. Consider what Dr. Karsten today and the medical examiner talked about, the amount of work done to break her bones and cut up her limbs and cut off her head. The efforts to cover this up were extraordinary and they were horrific. Consider the cutting off of her breast, her right breast. That's not something you do unless you have a desire to do it. It doesn't facilitate getting rid of the body. It takes additional time. He did it because he wanted to do it. All the stab wounds near her breast and on her torso. That was done out of a sick desire to do harm to her. That's the only reason that is done. Cutting off the breast, dismembering limbs, beheading her. Those acts, simply put, ladies and gentlemen, are the acts of a killer. They are not the acts of someone who is acting on impulse in a moment or acting on emotion. Who does this? What kind of person cuts someone's head off? A killer who's trying to get away with killing. His actions afterwards betray any innocence. That's how the evidence shows that what Maxwell Anderson did to Sade Robinson was an intentional homicide. There is no question behind the intent, and there's no question about the person responsible for doing it. The killer is him. He's the last person to be with her, the last one texting her, the last one whose residence she was at, the last one who had her car, the last one who had her phone, the last one who was with her.
Good one.
The one who burned her car. He did everything he could to try to get away with it. He tried to cover up. He tried to fool the police. He's trying to fool all of you, but he doesn't get to do that. You've all seen the evidence. It's time that you let the evidence speak the truth and you find him guilty.
Now, just to be clear, that clapping was clearly inappropriate, but yeah, no, the cat's out of the bag.